Scholars, today we are going to talk about the ideals of democracy. This is like foundational stuff. Like the whole course is built on these things. In fact, the whole dadgum country is built on these ideas. I mean, they're ideals, so we don't see them manifested all the time. But this is what that we were shooting for. All right, so let's dive right in. Today our goal is to make it so that you know the 5 ideals of American democracy by the time we get done, and to make sure that you understand what led up to the Declaration of Independence and the American Revolution. So, first things first, these are our 5 influential ideals, all right? One thing I will tell you about these, to kind of give you a heads up, and this should be pretty simple, pretty obvious. If you know what these words mean, like the individual words, you probably can figure out what they are talking about. All right, limited government, natural rights, social contract, popular sovereignty, and republicanism. All right, so let's get into it. First one up is limited government. Look, this is pretty simple right here. This is just saying that the government cannot do whatever they want. And I know to us that makes common sense, but back in medieval times, that's not exactly how things went down. If the government wanted to do something, they freaking did it. All right, so limited government. Government is limited. One of our big documents that we usually point toward, we got a little picture of it on the screen here, is the Magna Carta, all right? It was signed in 1208 or 1215, around that area, and it is out there to kind of say, like, hey, there's only so much that the king can do. We will get a little bit more into that, and you'll definitely learn a whole lot more about it in world history, but what I need to make sure you understand is this, is limited government is an ideal that our founding framers, like, we're building our government on, saying, hey, the government shouldn't be able to do whatever they want to. And we're going to see that they're a little salty about some things that probably brought this to the forefront of their brain. All right, let's go on to the next one. Natural rights. Okay, if something is natural, that means it occurs in nature. And rights, we know this. These are things that you are born with. So a natural right, these are things that we are given at birth. All right? And the person who really puts forth this idea, his name is John Locke. Probably with a name like that, you can figure out that he is very British. And what he proposes that all people are born with 3 rights: life, liberty, and property. All right, we're going to see this come up again very soon in the Declaration of Independence. But that is what I need to make sure you understand, is that natural rights are rights that people get when they are born. Can't get rid of them, can't give them up. And those 3 things are, those 3 natural rights are life, liberty, and property. All right, let's go on to this next one. Oh, God. All right. Now we're going to talk about old Thomas Hobbes. All right. Thomas Hobbes, also with a name like that, you got to figure he's pretty daggum British. He writes a book called The Leviathan, which is all about how the government's one giant monster. And his big argument that he makes in this giant behind book that he's written is that we as humans occupy the same state as nature does, or a state of nature. Meaning, very simply, this is that we are inherently bad. All right. This is one of those things that we'll talk about a little bit. But a lot of people will argue, oh, people are inherently good, people are inherently bad. A lot of the ideas behind government is that people are inherently bad, because if they were inherently good, why would we need a government in the first place? All right, so this social contract that he puts forth, or this idea for a social contract, is very simple. It's like, hey, as society, there's certain freedoms that we should give up so that the government can protect us. All right, here's an example. I have given up my freedom to walk into my neighbor's house and steal all their stuff. That's not a freedom that I possess. That's a law that we've made. I've agreed to it. And part of the reason that we've agreed to laws like this is because we don't want people coming in our house and taking our stuff when we're not there. All right? That's the idea of the social contract. It is a contract, okay? Someone gets something for something else, all right? So we get protection from the government by giving up certain rights. All right, let's keep on rolling. All right. Jean-Jacques Rousseau, yeah, definitely not British, French here. He alters the idea of the social contract. Hobbes would say is once you enter into that contract, we're kind of set in it. Locke's going to come around a little bit later and be like, I don't know about being set in it. Like, what if they started infringing on our life, liberty, and property? That could probably be a problem. And Rousseau is like, hey, actually, what I think about the social contract is this, is if the government doesn't hold up their end, like they don't protect us, they're actually, working against us, then we should be able to break our deal that we have with them. And what he pushes for is this idea of popular sovereignty. Popular, P-O-P-U, it's one of those roots that pretty much is talking about people at almost every word that it comes across, okay? Population, popular, popularity. These are all things that usually have to do with people. All right. The idea that government and their power, sovereignty means power. The power of the government comes from the people, not from anything else, not from just, one king and his decision. No, the power comes from the people. And that if the people are not being ruled with their consent, then they should be able to break the social contract and create another one by establishing a new government. Obviously, you are starting to probably see that our framers were pretty interested in popular sovereignty. And finally, republicanism. Okay, this is the one of the words that, I know y'all see Republican and you think, Donald Trump, Ronald Reagan, Brian Kemp, Red Team, elephants, all of those things. What I'm trying to tell you is this. Republicanism has nothing to do with that. All right, Abraham Lincoln doesn't got nothing to do with that. Republicanism simply means this. People elect others or choose representatives to represent their will. That's republicanism. We're going to find when we look in the Constitution, it's one of the guarantees that the federal government says to the states. It's like the states must have a republican form of government. They must allow their people to elect representatives to show their will. All right? It is an exercise of popular sovereignty to choose your republicanism or choose the representative that is given to you through republicanism. All right? I'm going to throw this slide up here. This would be probably a pretty good one to snap a picture of if you do that. It's got all these definitions just kind of in one little place. All right? Good place to review. All right, so let's get on into this American Revolution. This is some fun stuff right here. Now, look. We ain't going to talk about too much of this because a lot of it you don't really got to know, but I need you to have enough of a background on it to be able to know what the heck I'm talking about and know why these people are so ticked off they're willing to, fight. All right? Because this is what it comes down to is that, it's all nice to say that, oh my goodness, we should have limited government, natural rights, and all these things. But old King George over here, he ain't got no interest in that. He's interested in, him, in number one. All right? So, first thing you need to know is this. All of this starts, all of these taxation problems that we're going to talk about, these all start with this little war, the 7 Years' War, all right? This is a big one. It is between the English and the French, and everybody's got allies all over the place. It's fought all over the place, too. The main thing you need to know is this. Like most wars, it cost a whole heck of a lot of money, all right? And a portion of it was fought on North American soil, all right? Against, we call it here a lot of times the French and Indian War, okay? Because the French and the Native Americans were in a alliance against the British in this 7 Years' War, where they were attacking a lot of the colonies. The British, in turn after this, are like, hey, you know what? We kind of need y'all to pay us back for all that protection that we offered. And so they hand out this thing called the Stamp Act, where they just put a little tiny stamp on every single piece of paper that's sold. And you got to think, this ain't like it is now. Not everybody's using paper all over the place, all right? This was really affecting newspapers, lawyers, people who, state businesses, businesses within the government. Things that were, being used a lot. What I want you to see from the Stamp Act is simply this. They did not like that. They did not like having to pay for something that all of a sudden, it's like, whoa, this was 50 cents earlier and now it's $1? We wouldn't be very happy if we went to the snack machine and, we've been used to paying like $1 or $1.25 for a drink and we get there and it's $2 and they're like, what's going on? It's like, oh yeah, that war that was being fought and everything, we're charging you now for all that stuff that we use to protect you. What you need to see here, Townshend Act, these are more taxes that come down on things like glass and lead, which is mostly used for paint in those days. People get mad about that. They start protesting. We had the Boston, quote, massacre. All right. 5 people are killed in Boston Square protesting these Townshend Acts. There's a lot of questions that go around that whole thing. We actually have a future president of the United States that will defend the soldiers who are accused in the Boston Massacre. But that's another story for another day. Of course, we've got the Boston Tea Party. Colonists get mad about price taxes on tea. They go and just chunk a whole bunch of it in the river. What I need you to see is why the colonists are mad about the taxes, and this is what I want you to see down here, okay? They're mad about it because, first reason, hey, I don't want to pay extra for my stuff. I want to pay what I've been paying. But there's also this whole principled approach too, where it's like, I don't really know that I should have to pay taxes if I'm not a part of the decision-making process on how much these taxes should be. No taxation without representation. Like, my voice should be heard if I'm paying dadgum taxes. All right? So, before we go on to some of these other things that kind of led up to the Declaration of Independence, just want to show you this. This is what the tea that actually got thrown in the harbor looks like. It wasn't just a whole bunch of little like tea bags or those little boxes of tea that you see at the grocery store and stuff. Now, that's not what's going on. These were like bricks of tea. All right? And as you can see on here, like this brick of tea could last someone anywhere between 6 months to a year. And they threw like $3 million worth of tea in a river overnight. That is probably going to tick off whoever it is that was selling that tea. All right, that's a lot of money that was invested down the drain without profit, and usually there's punishments for that. And here we go. So as these punishments start to come down, we see that in King George is going to start yanking freedoms out. He's going to do things like he closes the port of Boston. Eventually, the colonists get so upset that they send this thing called the Olive Branch Petition. All right, they send this letter to the king, and they're like, hey, bud, we don't like what's going on. This is the things that we want to fix. These are the things that we want done. If you can do these things, then we're going to be great. But if not, we're going to have some problems. And the king King George III, he's like, all right, cool. I'm not too worried about y'all. Carry on. Whatever. I ain't even going to write back. All right. He just ghosts them. So, get a little group right here. We can see this. Now, people sitting around looking at a piece of paper. All right. This is obviously an artist rendition of the drafting of the Declaration of Independence. We've got old Thomas Jefferson, who is our main writer right here. We've got John Adams. Both of these two are second and third president of the United States. And old Benjamin never been a president, Franklin, right here. Still got to be on the $100 bill, though, so that's pretty cool, I guess. But they are, drafting this Declaration of Independence from the British Empire. And we're going to talk about why this is kind of a big deal coming up, because not many people up until this point have messed with the British Empire, all right? Especially been like, we don't want to be a part of you. Like, usually resistance, when it was met with overwhelming force, and people were just destroyed. So, a couple of things I want to leave you with on the Declaration of Independence before we get done. All right? It was drafted by Thomas Jefferson and, like I said, John Adams and Benjamin Franklin. The big things I need you to look at as we look at the Declaration of Independence is it is the foundation of popular sovereignty, saying that us people should be able to govern ourselves. And if we aren't being treated well, we should be able to change governments. And they are arguing that their natural rights, specifically their liberty and their life, is being infringed on. We're going to see that in there, they're going to change a word property to this idea of pursuit of happiness, and we'll discuss that when we get the opportunities. But what I want you to see is this, is when you're reading it, you've got like this, intro, this preamble, and then the rest of it is a whole lot of, hey, this is what's wrong. And so what I want to make sure that you're looking at as we go through this is try and understand what they are actually saying. Like, what are the things that are making them mad? What are the things that they want the king to change? How do they address the king? And also, please make sure you're paying attention, because I will tell you, most of these ideals that we've talked about, or a lot of them, are going to show up in that preamble. So make sure you are looking, and as you see them in there, make sure to note them. We'll be working on 1-2 next time I see you, and I hope this was helpful. I hope you have a wonderful day. Bye, scholars.